Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary. I was a 20-year Navy veteran, and I'm both a warrior and a father, so I'm also a protector. And 4 years ago, I went down to the border of Texas when the mass wave of humanity came in from South and Central America, and went down with the Texas Department of Public Safety and stood right on the edge of the water at the river there, and I watched a coyote bring a family, a so-called family, across the water. I was powerless to do anything, although, for my own self-protection, I was armed and certainly wanted to take action on this man that was trafficking in human beings. His family came across, at least I thought it was a family, man and wife and 2 children. One of the kids didn't get out of the boat, and the Border Patrol, or the Texas DPS trooper, says, "You forgot one." Now, why was this happening? It was because they were allowing families to come in undocumented if they brought someone in under the age of 8. I'm not going to relitigate the last 4 years. It's irrelevant at this point. All we've got now is 300,000 children that we know of, probably double that because you can't count ones that you don't encounter, missing in the United States of America. And evil exists in the world. And it exists in the realm of human trafficking and child sex trade, and they're in this country. And so that was the Department of HHS, that was their responsibility to make sure that the sponsors were vetted. They didn't do so. We've addressed what you're doing now. What is out there? What capabilities do you have in coordination with other agencies to try to find these kids?
We don't actually have at HHS enforcement capability. What we're doing is unprecedented, which is we're doing data sharing, and we have a war room where we are doing everything we can to locate these children, and then we, when we get close to locating them, we turn that information over to ICE and to DHS. And they have the capacity, enforcement capacity, to actually find them. But we work together with them, and we've got an extraordinary team in our war room in my building at HHS that is working 10-hour days to track down every single one of these kids and try to bring them back. A lot of them, it's going to be very, very difficult.
It sure is. I'm glad you're doing that because, you can't just forget them. We've got a lot of big issues facing child health, but the idea that some of these kids just got handed over to people that we don't know and have they disappeared. And I remember being down on the border. I don't know what these folks did with this little girl. I have an idea, but I know we were finding them dead in ditches. And so I'm glad that HHS is working with other agencies to do that. And as it's Police Week, I guarantee everybody on this mall this week is willing to help out in any way they can to find these kids. And I'd just like to follow up with, I've watched, and you talked about lunches and how kids aren't being fed very well in processed foods. And I remember growing up in Perryton, Texas, and my favorite people in school, because I hated school, was the lunch ladies. And they made the best food ever, and it was home-cooked meals. And I knew it was healthy because they weren't giving us sugary stuff. They were giving us home-cooked meals. And I went to lunch with my son a couple years ago, and everything they had was highly processed, frozen, and then heated up. And it was inedible. And so I would love to see the federal government get out of making sure that everybody eats the same thing, because we talked about the tribes too. Tribes can't eat the same thing everybody else does. Oh. So I want to go back to local control on figuring out what is best for the local kids in those schools, and then they cook those meals and get the federal government out of determining what's good and what's edible and what's not. So yeah, I appreciate you.
100% on board. I mean, we have a research capacity at FDA to give categories of food, and very simple, basic. Don't eat anything that comes in a package. Don't eat anything that's with chemicals on it that you can't read. Don't eat anything with more than 3 ingredients in it. And sending that out and letting people solve the issue of what exactly makes sense in their locality.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time. I yield back.